Hola Community, welcome to Blender Today Live. I'm Pablo Vazquez. It's episode 256. Who would have thought? What happened since the last 4 weeks? We didn't do a live stream the 2 weeks ago for the Blender Today because you actually got 2 videos in this channel. One, the Blender 4.4 reel with a bit of a flex, as some people called it, for the beginning with the flow. Then we had a video about the features that Jonathan Lampel and others have made from CG Cookie and from the community. I really like this one because there was multiple people in that video, and it makes it more fun to watch because it's people that really are amazing at what they do, which is much easier to cover everything that was new in 4.4, but today is about 4.5, the next LTS, which I thought it would be a lot less feature, like not so many features, because it's an LTS. You want this to stay good for the next 2 years, so not take many risks. But actually today we're going through the 888 commits. I didn't make this up actually. If you go, I have a list of everything that we're gonna cover today. It's gonna be a long one, but yeah, 882 commits in total, of which 232 fixes and about the same cleanups. There's also refactors, there's like all kinds of stuff. So how's everyone doing? Everything okay? Yes? No April Fools? No April Fool. Come on, not it's too many things going on in the world to even have an April Fool. But you know what we have? A new version of GIMP. Yep. Yeah, this is Blender Today, but I use GIMP every day, and it's an open source project just like Blender that just had a major release after I don't know how many decades. 3.0. 0.2 now, they have a point release, so it's amazing. I've been using it daily and already loving it. Just like I mean, some things were long overdue, you know, like selecting more than one layer at a time, or some others were really like waited, especially for me, for the like effects that you can apply and just turn on and off. They're not destructive. For example, text. I do a lot of text with a drop shadow, and every time I have to make a drop shadow, you have to like bake it. Not anymore. And not only that, but they restructure the whole system. So worth checking it out. If you haven't already, go check it out. It's a GIMP today. Oh, by the way, yeah, I found this video, which I haven't watched yet, but apparently it's someone that does a similar similar Blender Today, but for the entire yeah, GIMP. So I will share this with you too, so you go check it out. And a shout out to David's Media Design for making these videos covering open source. So that being said, they have a new logo also. That's big. You know what else is big? The list of the list of things that we're gonna cover today is I'm also streaming this live. So if you have any questions, you go to the Blender Today post that I made, and at the bottom you can leave a comment. But let's see what is new in Blender as of today. So today, actually, in this episode, I'm going for something new. I have, like, instead of having the list of 800 commits in this case, and then just deleting the ones that I'm not gonna cover and just have like a summary of them, instead I just highlight the ones that I'm gonna talk about with an emoji. So I can skip those, but you can see the amount of work, because the way I was doing it before, I would just delete the ones that I'm not gonna cover. So the list looked very small compared to the ton of work, the loads of work that the developers are doing. So, you know, I am doing it a bit different this time. Although I always post the full list unedited straight from the commit from the script that I used to get all the commits. So you know what it's being done. All right, so welcome to the new authors in the list of developers that are contributing to Blender. So thank you everyone and welcome. Then let's go with A for animation. We have a bunch of sections because now that since I don't filter them, I don't rename them. There are many more sections, of course, but let's cover some of them that are the most relevant according to my criteria. Of course, this is not set on stone. Expose action slots users to add a name. So with via Python, you can now access which data blocks are animated in this slot. So you can get fancy with your scripts. Then, speaking of fancy, animation presets. Frames per second. You know, in Blender you can choose, by default you start with like 24 frames per second. So you go to output and frame rate, you have by default 24 FPS. Now there are presets for 6 FPS, so basically in fours. 8 FPS, so animating in 3s, and then 12 FPS, animating in 2s. So this is pretty handy when you want to maybe, for example, make stop motion or just are doing some blocking animation, then you can set it right here. And while I'm here, by the way, let's do a bonus because we haven't seen each other in a month. Did you know the shortcut that it's not exposed anywhere, but when you're dragging the current frame indicator, if you hold Control, it will snap to every second. So if you're 0, 24, 48, and so on and so forth. But this is also dynamic. If you have 12 frames per second, the new preset, you can snap to every second. Pretty handy, isn't it? Then 6 frames, and then everything. 204, doesn't even like the snap in this case wouldn't even fit in here. Nice. All right, that was no one asked for that, but it's nice to mix a bit of learning and showing features. Next, add king set support for the Copy Global Transform add-on. The Copy Global Transform add-on now has king set support for pasting global transform, pasting relative, and fix to camera. This only supports relative king sets, not absolute. Then allows dash and push down on empty actions. It's now supported in the NLA. Nice. Asset browser. Oh, this deserves its own pipe sound. Asset browser. Because two things. Actually, there is another one that is in the UI section, but related to collections. Super nice. 1. Asset browser. Add import settings popover. Move import method into it. What does it mean? Well, when importing from the asset browser, what is the pull request? Plans to add further things. Part of which one is this in one import? Okay, there is a new popover for import settings, and not just the import method, but now there is a popover because there are more options in there. For example, the option to choose when you are instancing a collection, you can now choose what's going to happen with the data inside. So the import method is now shown in this popover, and then these are the two new options: instance collections link or append. So you know what you're doing with not only with the asset that you're importing, but with all the collections inside. Can you guys fix UV simming problems in 5.5? Can you please report those UV simming problems in 4.5? Thanks everyone for the chat, by the way, for the being in the chat. I haven't looked at it. I was looking at the news, but any issues with the stream, let me know in the chat. Let's continue, because otherwise it's gonna be a long episode today. Assets, display, file name, and path in asset tooltips. Also pretty handy. This is a feedback from the Blender Studio, that when you are in the asset browser, when you look at an asset, you want to know where it's coming from. Maybe you have the same asset multiple times, right? You have an asset called skin shader, and yeah, which file is it coming from? That will give you a bit more hints. So now it shows the file name and the path in the tooltips of this asset. Then BLF configure line. Okay, so this is not exposed to the user, but this is something that is going to help Blender deal better with the line breaking. Basically, you probably have noticed if you had long paths or sometimes with Python strings that, yeah, this can get too long sometimes to be readable. But now Blender will understand better the breaking lines, which will come in handy for another patch that is coming up. BLI, a bunch of changes, internal lines, like command line stuff. Then benchmark, you know, Blender has a benchmark built in. There's now support for running with hardware ray tracing enabled by passing the -RT suffix, and also open shading language in Cycles performance benchmark tool. So if you're using Blender, Cycles performance benchmark tools to test your hardware, now this is also available for OSL. Bunch of build changes, CMake, cleanups. This I haven't highlighted any of them, but you can imagine this list is pretty long. Cleanups are great. Sometimes, what is it, a cleanup or a refactor? That is up to the developers, but cleanups make the code better to easier to understand for, well, sometimes it makes it more tidy, but easier to understand for new developers especially. This is super important that these kind of improvements happen, and so many of them in all areas. Grease pencil, so many. All right, let's continue. Sorry if watching this on a big screen and it's a bit, I'm getting dizzy myself just by scrolling this. Okay, time to switch to one of the topics that I think make Blender 4.5 awesome, which is the Compositor. It's like, let me go full screen for a moment. Did you you've been following what's new in the Compositor, right? Like at some point many versions ago we had the first viewport Compositor, not viewport, actual viewport Compositor, but it was a baby viewport Compositor. And then some of those features made it into the regular Compositor, and then at some point recently we had the GPU Composite. The regular Compositor used the GPU. And then in the last release, 4.4 has a full new CPU Compositor. So now the GPU, the CPU, they all talk the same language basically. So that is been a ton of work, a ton rosen of work. Thanks to all that, it, like, by looking at these changes that I'm going to show you now, it makes me feel like, oh my god, now these people are like at full speed, because by unifying the two compositors, now they can actually focus on getting like a lot of the benefits from unifying. For example, add common nodes to Compositor. What does it mean? Well, you are probably familiar with nodes such as vector math, vector rotate, vector mix, value mix, clamp, float curve, or black body from shading nodes, for example. Well, they're now available in the Compositor because they speak the same language. How about some nodes that the Compositor had, but now they're unified with the other editors, such as value, color ramp, mix color, map range, math, combine XYZ, separate XYZ, and vector curves. All these nodes, they were available in other parts of Blender, but you probably noticed that they were different. They look slightly different. Like mix color had a different, the shading one had more options than the Compositor one. Well, now they are unified. The features that are gaining in the process are, for example, the mix color can now clamp both the factor and the result, because it's the same node that you know and love, or hate, because there were some mixed feelings about the mix color node when it came out in the shading nodes. The map range now can map different types and interpolations, and the vector curves have gained a new factor input. Some behaviors were changed. The map range previously forcibly clamped values whose magnitude is larger than a number, arbitrary number of 10,000. No longer the case. And one node is no longer with us. So F in the chat for the map value node, because the map value node doesn't have any business to do when you have the map range. Map value is like a simplified version, like a baby version. Map range is now, it doesn't have the limitations that the map value node has. And there is a clamp node. And yeah, now your old Blender will be, your old Blender files will be updated automatically under the hood to make use of this new node. So much support. So much support for the map value. I particularly, I am a fan of the map value node, and I'm not a fan of the, well, I wasn't a fan of the map range node until I actually understood how it works. So it's gonna take me a while to get used to it, but it's for the better. Some nodes that are in other parts of Blender have been remained separate. The separate and combine color modes, the RGB curves node, because the shader variant does not support film-like curves or black and white balancing. So they still separate nodes. And the texture nodes, well, spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Oh, I thought of a very nice segue on this, which I forgot. Anyway, common nodes in the Compositor. You know what's common is to have textures. Well, introducing textures in the Compositor. Again, more pipe sounds because it deserves it. Yep, you heard it right. Texture nodes have been added to the Compositor, and they are compatible with, yeah, you already know them. Are already supported through the GPU material and multifunction support, which is now exposed through the add menu. So let's see it in action. So for example, I have this beautiful render right here, right? And then what if I want to add some noise? I have this beautiful cube. In the Compositor, you can simply add now a, well, you can actually go to the textures. Should it be textures? No, texture. Utility, yeah, texture. And then maybe add some noise, like a noise texture or a white noise texture. And that's it. Of course, you need to set up your scene, maybe a bit more interesting than mine, but you get to see the results. This looks great. I wonder if it's I'm using a light version of the 1D, of course, of the build, because the release build was broken recently with the newer version of macOS, but like recently as in an hour before I'm streaming this. But anyway, you have access to a bunch of textures in the Compositor. Isn't that great? Voronoi texture, you can go nuts. You don't have to add a checker texture. It's so good. Before, you will actually have to go to the texture node editor, which it's broken by default because this menu is empty. You can choose between world and brush, but you can't do anything in this. I don't know if you've noticed, but you can like add, what am I gonna add in the world? You know, like it's so broken. This shouldn't make it to 5.0. We need to get rid of this. It's broken. It's not like there's no button to add things. Like, why even bother having it? Anyway, Compositor, we love you. Every Blender developer working on the Compositor and the textures and the, like, everything's coming together. Vulkan, GPU Compositor, Viewport Compositor. Nice, nice. All right, let's see what else. Oh, well, you know what kind of texture is pretty popular? An image texture, and there is a new node in town. This is not a new a node that has been reused from other area. This is new to the Compositor, and it's called the image info node. It brings so many possibilities. You can access texture coordinates, pixel coordinates, size, so dimensions, location, rotation, which for some reason is a single value, and scale. I guess it's it's 2D, so it's a, yeah, so I guess in degrees, and the scale, which is also a vector. So cool. And yeah, you get coordinates of the center of the pixel with the pixel coordinates, texture coordinates, zero center pixel coordinates, resolution, location. I think they renamed this to size in the image. I wonder what is the final result. I think there is a difference between the socket. Let's see if we can search for socket. No, I need to look. Oh, I have Blender. I happen to have my own 3D software right here. Let's look at the image info. We need fuzzy search in the compositor. That's one of the things we need. Okay, now it's called resolution instead of size. Nice. So cool. It's better than texture node. It's actually probably texture nodes under the hood, but yeah, awesome. So cool. Is it good with AMD GPU? What is it, like the compositor? Not sure, but in general, Blender depends on your platform, but it will run better in different. But actually, there is new for HipRT in this show today. Okay, what else is new in Blender today? Boolean socket support. Well, it's not used, I think, yet, but yeah, Boolean sockets. So the pink ones that you see in or rosé ones that you see in geometry nodes now are supported there. As you can see, there is also other under the hood changes. Initial support for implicit inputs. This is also pretty exciting. It's not, there's nothing using it yet, as far as I know, but or maybe this is related to the texture nodes. Basically, implicit inputs means that there is something in a value implicit, like already set, even as a, if you don't have using it as a fallback. For example, when you use a texture node in shading, the texture coordinate has an implicit value of the current UV map if you have one, or 0 coordinates. That is implicit. You don't have to connect it. By default, Blender will use the UV. All right, next changes. So excited, so cool to see the compositor after so many years of rewriting and unifying, now getting new features. Add glare suppress highlights option. So there is a new option in the glare node, which already got a plenty of improvements for Blender 4.4, which introduces suppress. The glare node has currently a maximum highlights input, which has a special value of 0. And now there is a toggle for this, for the suppress highlights. I'm not sure about the name suppress because Blender calls this clamping everywhere else, unless I'm mistaken and it's something else. Also, the spacing between the checkbox and the panel, I think, could be a bit less because then it would fit more text. Anyways, suppress. Is it still the name in main? Glare? In highlights, suppress. Yeah, kind of weird. But to me, it sounds like clamping, but maybe someone with more experience can let me know if it's exactly the same or not. All right, next, let's continue. Plenty of changes in the core, in the curves, fixes. Cycles has seen plenty of improvements as well. HipRT, OSL, One API has seen also improvements. Performance. So, as you can see, remember that Brecht van Lommel, the creator of Cycles and one of the biggest developers in the Blender history and the world history universe, was on a brief break recently and came back supercharged because the adaptive subdivision option, one of the very few experimental settings, and I'm not using Blender, I'm using Blender Lite now because the full release version didn't compile. But you are familiar with the experimental option for adaptive subdivision in Cycles, which has been around, I don't know, from 2.6, 2.7 days. It's been a long time. It was developed by a developer called I believe. And it's been experimental since day one. But many users are actually reporting that, yeah, it should be out of experimental because people are using it in production. Well, that was, turns out there are room for optimization because Brecht is set on a quest to get adaptive subdivision out of experimental. And by doing that is improving so many other areas, like perform attribute subdivision in the host side. What does it mean? Well, there is a number of changes that are being done. Optimizations, basically adding comments to the code, letting load resolution, switching to open subdiv, a smooth UV subdivision support with options, which motion blur support, kind of a big one, to make something not experimental, and many other. Remove kernel, evaluation code, making this basically more general use for Blender and other renderers. And also changing Blender inside to make use of this feature as a native feature that other renderers could use. So these are plenty of reasons to keep this experimental until doing it properly. And there's a bunch of commits that are part of this, like using open subdiv, interpolation, subdivision motion blur support, fix issues with Blender Sync and object device update, and many others. Then a small improvement, well, small, 5%, which depends on how long your renders. If your render is 50 hours, then 5% is a lot. Reorder shader data elements to improve cache utilization. Xavier Halade says that when profiling on an Intel Arc B580, this speed up brings about 5% in most scenes. There are some graphs in the pull request that make this. So sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, but I'll take any improvements. It's funny that people are still using the BMW. Like, at some point you're gonna, like, what are you measuring anyway? Because it's the time that the data goes to the GPU or so, maybe. The BMW scene is a bit outdated in terms of speed for testing. HipRT, not real time. Ray tracing is now not, it's on by default now. So for 4.4, there was not enough time to fully test it, but now for 4.5, it is the default. So if you notice anything weird in your setups when rendering with AMD graphics cards, make sure you check what are you using. And please report any issues you may find. All right, next. Disable spatial, no. Multi-thread adaptive subdivision dicing. This is also part of the adaptive subdivision. So not only is more efficient, more performant, there's also less, there was another one option here that it makes it use less memory, I think. This can significantly reduce memory usage and render setup time. That's super cool. Nice. On a MacBook M3 with 12 efficiency, 12 performance core and 4 efficiency cores, this changes to the multi-thread adaptive subdivision dicing, and this applies to everything. It's not only MacBook related, it's just the computer that happens to have the tests run, but brings about 10 to 14 times speed up on various scenes. Nice. Splitting still single threaded and can be expensive, but this is amazing. So cool. Nice. Someone asked, should I continue learning Blender while AI is such an uncertainty? Of course you should. You can also make music with AI, but that doesn't mean you should stop learning how to play guitar and piano, right? Of course you should. Who's gonna feed all those Ghibli films styled to the AI? Of course you should. Of course you should. Blender is, I mean, I don't know. Blender can give you a job, right? But it's also fun to use. It's like learning how to draw, but in 3D. It's also, I don't know. I use it for passing time. For like, I recently moved to a new place, so I made my own living room in Blender just to try it out, and also using the I don't know if you know that there is in the extensions platform, there is an IKEA add-on which you can enable, and you can basically just like add furniture when it I'm using a version of Blender that is not compatible, but when you try it, it should work. In this case, this one works, so you can just have, and then if you happen to have a similar item, then yeah, it's funny. That's so cool. Let's see. Disable special splits for hair BVH. Apparently this happens to be just too slow. It adds to the long build times, whereas not giving many advantages, especially now that things are moving more to the GPU. This seems to be no longer the case, that it's handy to have. So this has been disabled for hair BVH. Bunch of changes in one API. And wait, I almost missed a very important change with one of our viewers, Bad, or also known as Nick. Then there is a new bump correction algorithm in normal maps, in cycles. I don't know if you ever noticed, but in these kind of renders where the normals on one side are okay, right? You see highlights, you see dark areas, but at some point the highlights are gone. There's no in between. There's like one or the other. Well, there is a paper that was proposed by people very, very smart and implemented by also very smart people, which makes for a more easier transition between these two parts. You can see in this video, this is the old correction. Let me go a bit smaller. And the new. So you can tell about this area, the color, the highlights especially are kept. Super nice. Makes me want to re-render half my renders. So cool. And this is your first patch, I think, right? I saw you in the chat somewhere there. I think it's your first patch, so congrats. Yeah, here, not bad. So cool. Awesome. Nice. Let's do all the emojis. All right. Next. We go from cycles to draw manager improvements to depth picking. There was another one here that, I mean, it's an internal change, but I like when they do this kind of improvements as in like optimizations. For example, this removes 200 lines of code and adds 20 because there was a function to update the view to all the renderers, the workbench, Eevee, and it was doing a lot of heavy lifting where the depth graph already does. So this commit, for example, does not a functional change per se, but it's future proofing because you already have the depth graph that gives you updates for certain areas. So this is one of those very nice cleanups that they do among all the million other cleanups they do. Depth picking is the next change. This do not include non-selectable objects in depth picking. This allows to make transparent objects not interfere with navigation. So this means if you have an object that you don't want to be in the select, so basically if you have an invisible object or like here, unselectable objects, the picking is not gonna be taken into account, basically, which how it should be. But if you were relying on this feature, then yes, gonna mess with your workflow. But this is how it really should be. Come on, if you can't select it, then don't interfere. Basically, depth picking is when you click, and you go through the list of of objects. Documentation, draw, Eevee. What's new in Eevee? There is a... Okay, something is broken with the way this scrolling happens. Better geometrical normal foreshadow bias in Eevee next. What does it mean? We can actually look at these. So we got a lot of improvements in the shading department this week. So there is an improvement on the shading normals when the normal is far from the best shadow bias direction. So basically more accurate. When it's far away, should be more accurate. And oh wait, it's after before. Okay, let's go with the before and then the after. So before you get these issues, and now you get no issues. Your life issues have been solved with just this one commit. Super nice. It adds slightly bit more memory thing, but it's worth it because basically it looks good. So thank you, Clement. Next, F for FBX export. On exporting FBX, now there is a smooth groups option that allows to exporting the polygon smoothing groups. Generates bit flags, smooth group values, ensuring no faces from different groups sharing a boundary edge or vertex have the same value. Nice. All right, fixes. About 200 and some other fixes. So overlays, Eevee, crashes, bunch of crashes, Vulkan, then nodes, Grace Pencil, and those were just the unreported crashes. So these are all fixes that were not linked to any commit. And now here's just the ones that are actually linked to the reports that you do. Well, let's go. Gee. All right, how many? Let me go. Oops. FFF, refactor. Something funky with the scrolling here, sorry. Okay, next. Ghost changes, GPU. Remove RDNA. Oh, RDNA to shader viewport workaround. Oh yeah, I highlighted this one because just as a reminder that if you are using a AMD graphics card, you need to update your drivers to version 25.3.1 because from that version number on, there is a fix that happens to have issues with OpenGL and Vulkan. Even if you're not using Vulkan yet, because it's still experimental, it's completely understandable. There were also issues with OpenGL, and they should be fixed with the version number 25.3.1 or later. This removing the workaround has performance penalties on the RDNA based GPU. So actually, yeah, removing this workaround because now it should be faster in the new graphics cards. What else? Geometry. Oh, bunch of geometry nodes updates. And I saw in the chat we had our very own Harry Blends, a gem in the community. All right, add face option to mesh to curve node. This adds a mode option to the node to choose between the existing behavior and a new behavior that converts each face to a cyclic curve. So the mesh to curve has a new option, edges or faces. Interesting. I used this the other day. I didn't know it was that new. Well, 2 months ago, but it was committed just very recently. Yeah, March 4. Oh, on the same day that I did the BlenderToday, so that's why I missed it. Cool. Nice. Then support custom delimiter options in the import CSV node. Previously, only comma was a valid delimiter. Now you can enter anything, I guess. Is there a... yeah, a few characters are not allowed because they have other meanings, these ones. But now you can have a tab or a semicolon as a delimiter in the node itself. What else? Support opening images in the modifier. yeah, when you have a image input node input, no longer you have an ID only, you can now actually make a new image or open with the regular data block selector picker that you are used to see everywhere else. Then import text node. Nice. So you can now import a text file and a CSV option. That is pretty nice. I'm already eager to see what Harry Blend's gonna make related to importing text or CSV. Because the options are endless, right? A CSV can be anything, can be from your shopping list to your like mechanical, I don't know, anything, medical data. Then add names to string to curves instance geometries. Add names to string to curves. Oh, the name of each instance geometry is a character. This makes debugging the spreadsheet much easier, and the objects from visual geometry to objects are actually usable too. Nice. And then next, add scale to scale input to the curve to mesh node. Now you can actually adjust in the curve to mesh the scale value. Oh, I was also using this the other day. Oh, it turns out I was using a lot of new features without noticing it. Cool. Nice. Ari says the new nodes might be a feature length presentation at this point. Right? Let's go. Let's look. If you don't know Harry Blends, you probably know because you've seen it in this channel. These are one of the best videos in the internets, on even not related to just Blender, like in general. You should go check it out. I'm gonna share the link to the channel right now, and you should go check it out. Add subscribe. Quality material, guaranteed. Let's see. What else is new? So the scale input to the curve to mesh node, shortcuts for viewer nodes. Now you can take shortcuts. You know who says taking shortcuts not a good idea? In this case, it is, because you can add shortcuts using there is a new operator, by the way, to activate the viewer, like a node, and you can activate the node as a viewer, and this allows for adding shortcuts. Your nodes are activated using the operator instead of activating the viewer by setting it to active. This also unifies the behavior with the so you can press 1, 2, same way you can do in the compositor, but now you can in geometry nodes. Super nice. Next, move import nodes out of experimental. Yeah, this is no longer experimental, so this for sure is going to be part of Harry's video and Blender also videos. So yeah, they're not import and they're not experimental anymore. So how's the commit log? So the category import is no longer experimental, and then the nodes for import CSV, OBJ, PLY, STL, and text are no longer experimental. Nice. And this is just removing the boilerplate. Nice, yeah. Cool. All right, next. Improve performance with many inputs. Okay, so this is a performance improvement. So when you have a complex setup with a bunch of input nodes and inputs in general, now it's much faster. However, it's a regression. I don't know if it's faster than the original, but basically there was a bug that was introduced in 4.4 where the frames per second went down. So gotta mention that because, you know, it always be like, oh, it's faster. Yeah, but actually it became slower and now it's faster again. I don't know if it's faster than 4.3. I hope, because I would imagine, yeah, no enhance probably went above and beyond to make this faster for once and improve it for reals. Next, add the Grace Pencil menu. Oh my gosh, a whole new entry in the menu for grease pencil specific nodes. Yeah, so cool. We don't have a new entry very often, and when we do, let's celebrate it. Nice. Then we have covered, I think, pretty much everything except the last. There's a new node in town called Camera Info node. This is similar to the Compositor, right? Currently, there is no proper way of accessing the camera view information inside of geometry nodes. The closest alternative is the viewport transform node, which is only compatible with node tools. So Cartesian Caramel went ahead and said, all right, what is the proposed solution? To add a node to access camera information like the projection matrix and focal length. So look at all these options. Projection matrix, focal length, sensor, shift, clip start, clip end, focus distance, is orthographic or not, and the orthographic scale. So cool. And I think Cartesian also, Caramel was also, yeah, it's around here, you can see. Oh my gosh, surrounded by pros and people, amazing. We're so lucky in the community for having so many great people. Not only like making amazing things with it, but just like improving Blender and putting it out there for everyone, and just like going through the review process, which is a pain in the, soul, but it's worth it to have a code that is easy to understand. Sometimes features get added as add-ons because it's just much easier. You don't have to go through any review, you just do it. But then it doesn't always get done properly because one is Python, or also because the feature itself is not in Blender built in. For example, there's a bunch of add-ons, and I'm guilty myself. I made ones too for handling markers in Blender, right? Like selecting markers, adding names to mark, like doing, well, we can already add names, but like marker managers. Well, they're great. However, there is no concept inside Blender core of an active marker. There's not. You actually have to loop through every marker and then get the last one you selected or something like that. It's like, and every add-on has to do that because there is no built-in active marker concept in Blender. So in those cases, I wish more people will jump in and say, okay, maybe I can still have this add-on, but to make my life easier and make Blender better, can go ahead and try to implement the active marker, and then I make my add-on, something like that. So we both win. Next, Gizmo, add icon value property to support using custom icons. This one allows icons to use. Oh wow, nice. So you can have crazy toolbars now in Blender because they're gizmos, and you can implement a icon value. You can pass on an icon value. Gizmos new, that icon ID, icon value. So yeah, you can have you can go crazy with the UIs now. So cool. Neat. The Story Tools add-on is actually using something similar. Neat. Let's see. Next, we go for G for grease pencil. There is a reduce the size of primary gizmo online primitive. This changed by user Lucas. Made it so the last endpoint gizmo is now smaller. Okay, I think it's this one over here, before after. Doesn't have to do with the shape. I think it's just the color that it's smaller. The color, the yellow one, to be smaller. More like a fix, I would say. Then a new operator to split the strokes selected in points into a separate stroke. Super nice. And there was actually it was a task from 2023, and Pratik went ahead and implemented it. So thank you, Pratik. And another one by the community, Casey Bianco Davis, implemented or improved the random color values and saturation results, setting results on the draw tool for grease pencil. So this is, maybe if I can fit this in the screen. This is a legacy GP and grease pencil V2, grease pencil V3, and the new one should have better saturation, more like random saturation colors, so you can actually see that they're more variety, more random, which is a weird thing to say, right? So it's more random. No, it's just not just random, it's more random. Nice. Next, smooth groups add option to also consider sharp vertices. Interesting, but this is related to just smooth groups in general. Interesting. So I guess many add-ons can implement it. So OBJ is using it, and FBX, right? We just mentioned. All right, next we go through internationalization, which also seen a bunch of changes, which is super nice. Licensing, boring. Mesh, metal, mesh, avoid function overhead when extracting UVs. Also, performance improvements. Modeling, oh my. Remember back in Blender 2.8, the wonders of Blender 2.8. One of the wonders of Blender 2.8 was that the 3D cursor became 3D. If you remember, 2.7 or every version of Blender until 2.8 had a 2D 3D cursor. So it was 3D in space, but you couldn't rotate it. And now in 2.8, you could, introducing 3D cursor, 3D cursor, rotation. However, not until Blender 4.5. So let's see, that is 2019. So 6 years it took until a developer from the community went ahead and implemented one of the most useful options for this, which is snap to cursor now supports rotation. So you can actually use that rotation of the 3D cursor for something, because you can actually snap to it. That is amazing. So I made this task, which actually we should close. I haven't tested it myself yet, but I made this task based on a request from the artist here downstairs. So yeah, basically, yeah, you can rotate the 3D cursor. You can set it to rotation, but yeah, Blender doesn't use that rotation unless you set it. So snap to cursor only aligns the location, but not the rotation. So the rotation is actually used only when you create a new object, not when anymore. So cool. This is awesome. So I made this proposal. I made the design task as a designer, and it was picked up by Nika, but then Padraig took some interest in it too. And you would imagine this not too complex, right? Because it's rotation, so you just copy paste the rotation, right? No, there is bones, there are meshes, there are like yes, a lot to consider. So thank you, Padraig, for the patience. If you look at those, like to make something in Blender, make it in Blender, then you requires a lot of patience, right? You have changes, you have to learn, you learn a lot because you get developers with a lot of experience looking at your code and giving you feedback. But yes, it can break some hearts. So thank you for the patience to you and every developer who has gotten bits of their bits in Blender. Thank you. And I say that myself. I work at Blender, and many other people that work at Blender also have pull requests that are just sitting there waiting, or just not compatible with some changes that are upcoming, or some, like, it happens to even to core developers too. Now maybe core developers can actually work around it, but still it's not easy either for Blender developers themselves. Thank you, Padraig. Next, nodes implement operator activate viewer. Yeah, we actually been seeing this for the shortcuts. It's a new operator, Python. This actually should be in Python, in the Python section, not in the nodes section, because more related to a API, RNA API. Nodes, enable panel toggles in the Compositor. Yep. Now the Compositor supports Boolean sockets, so now this enables panel toggles, those toggles that are in the panel name title. Next, OBJ export, update bit flags mode groups, OpenColor.io, support using file rules to detect the color space, and actually OpenEXR, it's doing a similar thing. This changes, very important for interoperability. If you work at a studio that uses ACES and uses OpenEXR, renders from Blender, well, this will make life easier because ACES, the Academy color encoding system, uses, requires a format, container format, color space to be set. And Blender wasn't setting it, so now it is when saving OpenEXR settings. And also there is improvements done by Brecht on handling these values in EXR files, writing it if appropriate, and also the compression settings and the depth settings are kept when you resave a file. So if you save an EXR with your favorite settings, the next time you save it, they're gonna be kept. That for me is it's amazing. Next, overlay options, Python API, PyDoc, Python template. There's a new template for adding gizmos. Wow, this will make lots of add-ons use this, I guess. So if you're not familiar with this, Python templates are built in Blender. So if you go to Blender, go to the scripting workspace, then templates, Python, there's now a gizmo simple 2D, which if you run it, hey, it makes a thingy here. So it's a bit of center, but hey, and it's blue and oh, nice. Does it scale properly with the view? It does. Look at that. Nice. Oh, nice. It's for moving. That's so cool. Let's see. IKEA browser ad in the chat. Yes, I just mentioned that I moved recently, so I made my living room, but I'm not using anything like illegal here. It's in the Blender extensions platform, so you can actually look at it. At some point I hope they will use the maybe the new implementation of the online asset browser for this. Maybe that would be a good candidate, together with Polyhaven and more open source-ish one. Oh, my camera turned off. Oh no. Well, I think my camera just died. It's too hot. Yeah, so should I attempt to fix this? So let's see. So let's add a new camera. This is so professional. So professional. So let's do. You will see, because I do have a backup camera, and the quality is just amazing. There you go. Is everything okay? It's too hot, and the battery just died. So we good? We good? Now I have a bunch of filters. Yeah, so I can actually use some reaction studio lighting portrait. This makes it look expensive, and I can even change the studio lighting AI. All right, still ugly though. Okay, never mind. Let's continue so my camera can rest. The other one. Where was I? We were on. Wow, we still have UI. that's a big one. Python, we were in Python, right? So we look at the Python changes, refactors, and then what else? I think from refactor we go like, look at the amount of refactors. Some of them might introduce undesired changes. They shouldn't, but just keep an eye out because you can see there are multiple. The next section is sculpting. Wow, nice. So what's new in sculpting? Add mask by color to the menu bar and enable the redo panel. So this adds it to the menu, but also enable redo panel when using mask by color. So you can actually redo the operation with your favorite settings. Sculpting, improve smooth brush performance with small radius. And yes, I remember sometimes the oh no, GIF are impossible to stop, but I guess you can see that this one is fast, you can see that this one is slow. The LTS was fast, so we regained some performance. And there's some numbers here also. Nice. Shaders. Add filter width input to the bump node by Brecht van Lommel. So this is in shaders. This makes it possible to restore the previous Blender 4.3 behavior of bump mapping, where the large filter width was sometimes abused to get a bevel-like effect on stepwise textures. For bump, from the displacement socket, filter width remains fixed at 0.1. Nice. Is there any picture? There are pictures. Neat. So basically allowing you to restore the previous behavior in 4.3. Next, bunch of changes in subdivision, also shading, subdivision. Vulkan is coming and it's already, well, this is, I mean, it's still experimental, but GPU subdivision is enabled now in Vulkan. So super welcome. And the same as OpenXR is also enabled now in Vulkan. Bunch of tests done. And let's go into the user interface changes, which are plenty. For example, did you notice now that when you are loading an asset or loading a shader, the icon no longer is just transparent, but it now actually shows an icon that is loading. It's not animated though, unfortunately, but it's a welcome addition. I noticed recently that the materials have it. So when you are, when you preview a material, you see you have the icon, and then, well, you have to wait. This is Eevee next afterwards. So there you go, and it rendered. There you go, bam. Next. Show new button in action slot selector where no action. That's so cool. Why? This was in 4.4. Yes. Yeah. So basically, before it was an empty. There's nothing in it, and usually Blender has a plus button to add a new item. Just to greet you with some usability. Speaking of usability, the 2D rotation cage is now showing if the rotation is enabled, basically. So now it has the handle, the indicator. Another small one, but when you're using this is a small one, maybe no one has ever noticed, but do you ever look at the breadcrumbs up here? Well, this is technically not correct because it shows the object that has a material, but this is object. The material is not linked to the object. In this case, it's linked to the mesh. So you can see at the bottom right. This has been fixed now. And when the material is in the object and data to the mesh, then it will show appropriately. And if it is actually linked to the object, it will have the proper path. So small thing, and cool to see that small quality of life. So you can see at a glance now where that material is coming from. Next, hide NLA scroll bars when they are very short. Yep, this is a fix. This should also go maybe in 3.4.1 because it's the same in every other editor, but not on this the NLA editor. Maybe it made it into 4.4, but it's a very small change. It's like this few lines of code, and it's a fix. Show error when rip is attempted with sync selection. Oh, nice. There's no image, but you will see if the rip tool when modeling is not compatible. It will show an error. It will tell you what's going on instead of just silently failing. Nice. Fix double padding in the file browser. Images are broken, but fix padding is always better. Improvements. Oh, pen users. If you're using a pen, ever noticed how in order to see what the tooltip is, you would have to like aim at it and then just release and then wait, because the threshold for movement was just too precise, which is fine when you're using a mouse, but not when you're on the pen and had too much coffee. So that has been improved by Harley, and basically just uses a threshold that is part of the like Blender already has this threshold setting property somewhere, and now there is a drag threshold. So I think it's 3 pixels instead of just the one. 3 pixels for the mouse and 10 pixels for tablet pens. Super nice. Next, as a browser, got a new view, horizontal view, which is similar to the vertical view but without type, with like a thumbnail view but with the text on the side and smaller. This is similar to the file browser already, and you can switch it in the drop down in the asset browser, and I don't think this is in the asset shelf yet, or is it? Let's see. Select the object, go to vertex paint, and no, this is not there. So you have to go to the asset browser and then list, horizontal list, and then you have it. Nice. Can I resize it? No. Can I scroll horizontally? Yes. There is a scroll bar. Yes. Nice. Oh, this works differently. The scroll bar in other editors actually takes you to the like this will take me to the first place. Like if I'm in the timeline, for example, and I have this collapse, then I click here and it actually takes me there, and this doesn't in the file browser. It just takes you in increments. Nice. But hey, this is scrolling actually takes you sideways, which is a bit shocking at first, but once you get used to it, it's great. Oh, and now actually you can horizontal scroll, but that's it's not implemented that way, because horizontal. But I think Blender still doesn't have horizontal scroll support. It's just the regular scroll. I wish it did. Next, increase default rows for the tree views. Yep. So I don't know if you notice, sometimes the default number of rows in this was a bit too short. Sometimes so short that there was a gap between the buttons and this. Now there's not anymore. However, I noticed that we are pretty inconsistent in the usage of these buttons for like the arrows. Like tree views allow for drag and drop. So technically these arrows are no longer needed, but we're still using them in some places. Like the geometry nodes group sockets don't use it, but the bone collections do use it. So it is handy to just go one level with a button, but is it worth it having the 2 buttons there or not? Does it add noise to the UI? We should at least be consistent, right? Next, Blender theme colors matching the default theme for face orientation. This is the light theme, I think. Ah, yes, the light theme. Wow, this is a huge patch that I made a few weeks ago. Massive change. It will revolutionize your life. When I was working in the release notes, I noticed that the glare node has a property that was called rotate 45. Yeah, 45 what? Okay, you can guess that it's degrees, but it didn't mention that. And it's not a new feature from the new glare node. It's actually been there for ages. And yeah, I fixed it by literally just adding the degree Unicode there. So these are the kind of things that I think are very non-controversial. So if you see anything like this in Blender, maybe consider making a patch. Maybe this could be your first patch, right? It's always fun to see this. Why am I looking at that camera when you're up here? Sorry. Next. And this is how, by the way, how you get your name in the Wall of Fame. The Wall of Fame is on blender.org/about/credits. And here you have the Blender 4.4 contributors. We have Sivren there in the chat. So let's see how many Dr. Sivren had on here. In 126 commits in Blender 4.4, but over like nearly 2,000 commits since 2014. Oh, happy 10-year commit. Yeah, last year we had cake, right? You brought cake for the 10-year anniversary of commit rights. Nice. How much am I? I did 6 commits in 4.4 and then 400 something since 2012. Oh, I need to up my game. I need to add more one single line commits here and there. Okay, next. Blender theme. No, let's see. We are here. We were adding the unit output FFmpeg. Oh, nice. A quality of life improvements. Have you ever seen the FFmpeg video codec settings and just tweak them just because they are there, right? But just to find out that some of them were not even relevant to the codec that you were working on. Well, now the codecs that do not make, or the settings that are not relevant to that codec are no longer be shown. For example, if you're doing BNX HD, yeah, you don't need anything about lossless output, lossless. The same for FFV1 and other. Next. Increase the height of the lens. Oh, nice. This is also related to pen use or like accessibility. The area for like splitting a region, or yeah, basically maybe taking this editor and putting it somewhere else, like docking it into somewhere else. The left side area is now much bigger, as big as the header. Basically, it's before it was hard coded to this size, which comes from the 2.7 days where we actually had lines on them, on the corners where you could split, and then at some point you could split from every corner, so these lines went away, and now this has the same height as the header, which actually, by looking at the code, you can see that instead of just having a spot area, it's just header size, yeah, by the maximum of the rect area. Nice. Next. Use snapping. Oh, cool. All right. Stop the press. This is major. Collections in the when adding collections in the from the asset browser, they will now snap into whatever you have or surface you have. This is huge. Let's have a little applause. This is huge. Okay, enough. But yes, snapping for collection. This was a long-awaited feature for, well, since we have collections assets, and it's now here. So super nice. You can drag and drop from the outliner, from the asset browser. So yeah, cool. Next, border area drag width is now bigger. So when resizing areas by dragging it from the edges, the hit area is now wider than the visible border. So what you see is not what you get. You will see like the border area is one size, but you can actually drag. It will be bigger. It will be larger. So this is yeah, super nice. So you don't have to aim so carefully to that corner. Next, increase contrast of the area resize feedback. So when dragging an area, now this contrast, actually there was a difference in color between macOS and like high DPI and non-high DPI screens, but now that's gone. So nice. Speaking of colors, I wasn't actually speaking of colors, but hey, the RGB icons now have colors in them. Isn't that great? Small thing, but yeah, if you have an image and you, for example, you see these color alpha RGB, they are now red, green, and blue. So you can see at a glance. Small things, but I like it that we are bringing more color into Blender. Slowly, steadily. Blender icons. That's it. Rename add file node operator to add image as node. Small change, but yeah, makes the add file node is too generic. It's an image node. Increase the hit size of the closed region action zone. When the regions are closed, this area is now much bigger, so you can actually open the indicator. And there is another commit that removes that icon. It uses something else. So just the region is bigger, but most people probably are using either the shortcut or the pie menu. So here, let me, oh, actually I cannot go full screen because I didn't set up the other full screen. You're gonna see colors, yay. Do you know, and do you use, if you know, the pie menu for regions? This is a setting that for some reason is enabled only with developer extras, but this is silly. It should not be reliant on developer extras. However, if you enable developer extras and then you go to key map and enable region toggle pie, and then pie menu on drag, maybe just so you have both. Basically, when you press N, it will toggle this pie menu. So you can do side to one side for the sidebar, to the other for tools, to bottom to asset shelf, and the header in the top. So basically, it's very quick to move regions. Wow, I would even go as far as maybe having one corner to be like hide all regions, show all regions, so you can get everything out of the way for a moment. That could be handy, especially when working with small screens, now that you have so many corners with the actions. Yeah, so do you use it, and would you use it? Give some feedback, because some people are proposing to have even that as a as the default. So region toggle pie, basically. What else? So test it and let me know. There was a patch actually to make it so when you press N, it will do the sidebar, but when you hold, it would be this. So yeah, let's see. Control Alt Z is basically toggle all regions. Yeah, it's not Control Alt Z. That doesn't do anything here. You mean the full screen, the view area full screen? Ah, because I have something else. Anyways, let's see. scroll bars on the left side of the tools of the left align region. Actually, it's not only for tools, but the tools is the one that comes to mind. So previously the tools or any region on the left side had the scroll bars on the right side. So it would get on the way, and when you try to resize it, it would actually pop the scroll bar. Very, very annoying. So now it's the scroll bars on the left side, so they don't get on the way if you don't need them. And then you can just scroll bar there. But I mean, if I were you, I would either just use the middle mouse button on the pen or on the mouse. And I keep looking at that screen, at that camera. You are my camera. What else is new? Use red alert theme for unsupported nodes. Yep. Now there is a theme setting now for the nodes that are not supported. So yeah, we don't see it here, but basically when a node is unsupported, it shows red. Now it's using the theme color. Then, oh, this is awesome. This one is great. It's literally candy, almost literally candy. Look at this. Look at the amount of colors in Blender nowadays. So the list of socket types, it was just the name of the socket, float, integer, whatever. So when working with nodes, you're getting familiar right away. You get familiar with what color means what, right? You see a green, you say, oh, this is geometry, even if it's called something else like mesh, curves, or splines. You know that is a geometry type socket. So now there is a color in it. So yeah, it looks exactly like the socket. It's using the same code even. So thank you so much for this, Leon. It's so cool, so good. Like such a small thing. And oh, this is not only for the those socket type, but also for the zones, for the material outputs, for, well, in this case, for repeat, and for the for each element. So even when you don't have that many options, you see them. So cool. Rainbow collections. Yes, connections. Collection. It is not an April's Fool. This is April's Schools. And I keep looking at the screen, the camera. All right. Let's continue. Show curves info in viewport statistics. So this is more like a fix. I think they should also go into 4.4. Because in Blender 4.4, yeah, when you're using the new curves data block, well, new, it's been around for years, but it's not the old curves, but the new curves. It used to just say 0 vertices, even though you had vertices points. Now it actually says the right number. So again, this should go to 4.4. It's a fix. 4.4.1, by the way, if you Blender, there's a new Blender coming next week, perhaps, or the week after, but keep an eye on, because Blender 4.4.1 is coming. Correct key map. No, wait, another one. Oh yes, this one by Idextia. It's also nice. So it's a small thing, but when you have a when you already have a preferences editor open, and then you open the preferences like view details, and Blender would open a new window, and now it's just if it's not if there is one editor already, just use that editor. Only open it if there is none yet. So small thing, quality of life. Keymap editor, correct the keymap editor to match the OS key label on the platform. Yep, because sometimes it would show Win when you're using macOS or Command, or yeah. So now it will use, on macOS we'll use Command, CMD. On Windows it will use Win, and on everything else we'll use OS. Then remove, oh, this is also a small, literally small change, because the indicator for the current frame will now disappear. And this is actually coming from it's inspired by a right-click select proposal, which I should comment on. But yeah, basically this stem it's not really needed when you have a when it doesn't fit in there. And I actually have a bug report on that I need to report, because the it's super nice basically. So when you let's make this much bigger because we can. So when there is no room there, it goes away. So now you can actually click drag this whole thing, and it should snap to that size. It does when you don't have a header. So if you hide the header, boom, and then it will snap, boom. Look at this, the cleanest timeline ever. So cool. Blunk. Goes away. I do have a bug though, that when you have a marker area, then snap this, and then you can no longer yeah. Oh yeah, you can if you actually click on the, oh no, I don't know. It tries to select the markers underneath, and you can tell that because if you set the color of the if you set the color of the header of the dope sheet timeline theme space header, no, what was it called, scrubbing markers region, why is it using the same? Oh, it's using the same for both. It's using the same color for both. That's why. Well, that's not why, but that's a bit silly. Anyways, they they overlap. Like the marker should no longer be visible once you are here. However, although it would be actually pretty neat if they were visible, but just a tiny little triangle there at the bottom, right? So you can still see which frames have a oh, that would be actually, shouldn't be much hard to fix. To do like a little triangle here to indicate the marker. Nice. Or maybe it could be upside down up here and still be drawn on the... Anyways, needs design. Let's continue. What else? Notes. Add placeholder for text button in the string input node. This is a not even a description. Ah, yeah, placeholder was missing the string. I really like placeholders. They were introduced in 4.0 and super handy too, I think. I proposed it and there were some people against it, and because it adds noise, but it also adds information, right? Because in this case, okay, string, 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 you have string 3 times. You don't need it here, maybe. However, in some cases, when you there are some cases where you can name, especially your geometry nodes, where you can have, for example, an object. And if you don't do anything, the object placeholder will be object. But you can rename that socket to be whatever else, and that will be used. Let's see if I can get it done here, because we are live, and then why wouldn't I show things? We're hanging out. So in the nodes, if you have a group node, if you have a new node, a new socket type, for example, object, this case, or object, then object says object, right? So when you look at it, it just says object. But what if you could, in theory, rename this to whatever? Then you could use this as a socket. I think there's a patch that does this already. So in that case, you could, and it would it would make it look more custom. You can rename it to anything when it doesn't fit in the node. So I think it adds a layer of usability improvements. USD improvements, and last but not least, well, actually we are reaching the VSE options. There are, oh, this is also a nice one by John Kirill Senson, another developer that is part of the Blender Development Fund since recently. So thank you for your donations, you. So ever have a like drag and drop and open a file, and Blender sets the frame rate and changes the color space and does some operations without telling you. Well, now it's gonna tell you. It's like, hey, scene frame rate was automatically converted from this to this. I would have proposed, I wasn't involved in this. There was no, yeah, only Richard. I would have proposed, when having this long reports information, to add the relevant information at the beginning, at the very beginning, or like as much as possible. So you could, instead of saying scene frame rate was automatically converted from to that, which is the what number you want to see, I would put this here. So scene frame rate is now 30, converted automatically from, or is now 30, it was, and then the number converted automatically. So you can rephrase it, especially if you're a native English speaker, you can probably do it much easier. But yeah, try to add the actual, like the gist of it, the content, to the beginning, because there might be screens resolutions where it doesn't fit, or yeah, it's just too much text, and by the time you are actually reading, then the thing went away. Oh, another one by John, the snap to frame range. Blender will now snap to the frame range, the beginning of the or the end of the sequence. Nice. The PNG, I was waiting for it to be animated. The keyframes will now slip with the content. So when you use the strip contents operator in the sequencer, now it will slip with it. There is no video, no demo, no description other than this, but it's in Blender. Fix delete retimings key. Yeah, this was an issue in the operator was wrong, basically. The operator in the menu was using delete when it should have used retiming key delete, if you're on a retiming key delete key. And Vulkan has initial OpenXR support, which is exciting because one of the remaining changes that were missing, together with the subdivision, which was also added in this part of this episode. Weight paint has now undo steps. When you change properties of the weight paint, now they're added to the undo stack. And last but not least, Windows ARM 64 now supports subdivision using the GPU on Qualcomm GPUs, using the Qualcomm, ARM GPUs. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is it's all. So I think I can end this very unprofessional by just dragging things around. So I hope you had oh shoot, I had the questions. All right, never mind. I'm not going anywhere. What are the questions? Please, they're not way too many. How many? 13. Okay. All right, so these are replies. You guys are talking to each other. And McClainer says, are there some technical... Hi, Mr. Kleiner. Are there some technical difficulties behind making images markable as assets? Images are essentials, but they're still impossible to mark as assets. The dinosaurs themselves were already marking materials as assets, but images are not the dinosaurs. Well, no, but replies. However, you can test in the experimental settings, not in official releases. You can use the extended asset browser option, which allows you to have pretty much anything. Well, doesn't implement anything, but basically it removes the limitation of the mark as asset. So you can now mark as asset pretty much any data block. I don't know what you can do with it. I don't know where is it gonna even show in here. But hey, it is possible. So these brushes, where is it gonna show? Probably in the now I can hide the header. And probably in the as a browser, right? It's so weird to use the list of editors vertical like it used to be in 2.7. Yeah, there is. Here you go. An image. Great. What can I do with it? Can I add it to the compositor? Compositor? Oh yeah, and it adds an image. Hey, looks like you can actually do it already. Nice. This is experimental. I think it just basically removes the limitation. Doesn't implement any features for it. It just removes the limitation. So handle it with care and yeah, that's it. The next, wow, there's a long discussion. So hey, Ritam Tiata says, hello Pablo, I've been using Blender for 6 years. Hey, since 2.8. But I have never been able to completely get rid of the noise in render of a huge scene. I tried many solutions I could find online, like splitting up layers, playing with noise sample and threshold, temporal denoise, rendering large and lowering it later, and I still can't get rid of it. I haven't rendered 5-second animation for an entire month because I cranked up the noise samples. Look at the, well, here you're getting some feedback, so thanks Namnabad and everyone for helping out. But yeah, there are tutorials on YouTube how to get rid of the noise. You're always gonna have a little bit of noise, so if it's always gonna have noise, like always. Yeah, that's the nature of it. Use the noisers. Yeah, I can't think of anything else than rendering bigger and then smaller again. By the way, it's always way better to just, instead of duplicating the amount of samples or 4 times the amount of samples, just render twice as big, so 4 times the render time, but making it smaller, that should get rid of it. At least the very fine one. And then, by the way, have you looked at the latest series by Pixar, the Win or Lose, or the one from that is set in the Inside Out world? So much noise, but it's film grain, I assume, that they add, but it's so much noise. It's a bit much. It looks cool, but it's a bit much. Next, Johnny Mograph. Hi Pablo, when do you think you will be able to start uploading geometry node setups directly to extensions? Well, that needs assets, online assets. There is no, not that I know, there's no clear date, but yeah, there is a, there were plans, there was discussions on, I think on Dev Talk, you will find a thread about it. But yeah, first online assets, and then if they're gonna be on extension to Blender or not, that requires some thinking, because I mean, I don't know, because people can already submit entire add-ons which can do anything. So adding blend files, but the problem is that if you allow this, like, people will start uploading maybe textures that maybe they don't have the rights to, maybe they tell you they have the rights to but not, and then Blender can get into legal issues and you have to take things down, or it takes a lot of moderation time also. So if the community are willing to help with that process, which you can, by the way, if you go to extensions, approval queue, this is public. Here you can see everything that it's been submitted. So if you see here something and it's like, hey, this is doing something nasty, you can just literally just log in and leave a comment. But yeah. Next, Flogan says, again, there's no reason, no, hello? There's no reason in having the tweak tool and moving with G do the same thing. Tweaking should affect the selection only in an area near the cursor, with the area radius controlled on the mouse wheel. It can be increased to affect the whole selection or reduced to better than losing the current selection in order to tweak an area. There is no reason in having the tweak tool and moving with G do the same thing. So something wrong with the tweak tool. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar. And I don't use the tweak tool, I use G. But yeah, no, not familiar with it. Chameleon scale, long time no see. Do you remember elastic implicit skinning? Yeah, I assume it's outdated now, but is there something similar Blender has in its radar? No, not that I have seen actually related. The closest I would guess is like nodal setups for rigging, for weight painting. Joni Gizmo says, not even know, hello, just sends a link to a fix. This is a fix, but it also adds some UI for vertex parenting. You can animate vertex parents now because of this. And oh, it's a fix. So it's something new that I didn't mention because it's marked as a fix. It also adds some UI for vertex parenting. So then it shouldn't be it should be a UI thing, a UI change, right? It adds parent vertices, parent vertex, parent vertices. Nice, and addressing the does it really need to be like this? You didn't make a pull request for this thing. You should have made a pull request, because then they would have probably give you some feedback on this, right? Or anything actually, so you can actually leave a comment. I like pull requests because that way you can leave a comment. You can't leave a comment on a commit, only on pull requests. Hello Pablo, 3 questions about the video sequencer. Do you plan to add the long-awaited GPU support for rendering? That yeah, it's GPU support is planned, but it's not an easy thing to do, as you can imagine. But yeah, it is planned. Do you plan to add a more convenient composer unification and VSE? Yes, that is in planned, and yes, it is. So there are many ideas going around, but basically one of them is the Compositor right now has just the one option to use nodes. But what if you could do the same as geometry nodes, where you have a selector, right? And you can just select multiple and have many and choose many. So in that case, you could have one for the Compositor. This would allow you to share compositing setups between scenes, or append a compositing setup from another blend file. Awesome. Link it to another blend file, so it's unified, and potentially use that as a video sequencer modifier, maybe, right? You had your color, whatever, strip, and then you could, in theoretically, add a compositor modifier or like effect or something that uses the compositor as an effect. And also, while we're dreaming, you could use that as an image operator, right? So you have an image editor, and then you can apply operators from like a tool. The same way you have geometry nodes tools, you could have compositor tools, which are basically nodes that affect the image. If you have a node that rotates the image or adds a vignette, why not having that as a tool that you can operate from the image editor and from the sequencer editor? Would be so cool. So yes, dreaming is possible, but it's not that far off, because remember, the Compositor is now awesome and uses GPU. So do you plan to add support for multiple audio tracks as multiple strips from video files that support this? Isn't that supported already? No, but there was something added recently. Yeah, I heard something about this, and I'm not sure. But yeah, no. No, actually, I'm not sure. I don't know. You can drop by to ask this in the chat of the video sequence editor if you want just to know if it's there. But yeah. With that being said, I think I'm gonna wrap this up because it is too hot in Amsterdam, and it's time for me to go. Thanks everyone for staying until the end. I had a great time. We went through 800 commits or so. Thanks for watching until the end. Leave a comment or interact with this video if you like what you've seen. If you don't like it, also interact, because that adds a lot of engagement to the video and makes other people watch it. Remember, there is a new Blender Heads episode. You've probably seen it. It's featuring the live of a Blender developer. What do they do after dark? featuring Sergey and many other developers. So go check it out. That being said, 7 o'clock, that is around 2 hours less. Oh, thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great week. I'll see you in 2 weeks on April 15th in a fortnight. Nice. All right. Stay tuned. Bye. Ciao. Thanks. Gracias. Dankjewel. Arigato. Grazie mille. Tak. Dankeschön. Obrigado.